Hello and welcome to today's webinar on place-based education brought to you by MindFuel. My name is Sabina and I'm one of your MindFuel teachers. I'm so happy that you have decided to join us today to look deeper into this pedagogical approach that embeds place-based experiences into day-to-day curriculum, teaching and learning. To help us, our special guest, Dr. Phil Butterfield, Principal of Connect Charter School in Calgary, Alberta, will share some of his school's experiences with place-based education. Welcome, Phil.
Thank you very much, Sabina. It's wonderful to be with you.
Throughout the world, there are inspiring and unique examples of place-based education being implemented, from teachers teaching single lessons or project on their own to whole schools implementing this pedagogical approach as a school-wide initiative. For each of these classrooms and schools, place-based education looks a little different, and it is used to engage students in their learning in diverse and local ways. So, what is place-based education? The Center for Place-Based Learning and Community Engagement defines it as an immersive experience that places students in local heritage, cultures, landscapes, opportunities, and experiences, and these experiences are used as a foundation for academic studies. As a multidisciplinary approach, it promotes active student engagement. Phil, what is place-based education within the context of your school?
Well, I will back up just a moment to give a little context around Connect Charter School, because the mandate under which we operate is one that is focused around inquiry-based learning, supported by the meaningful integration of technology and outdoor education. That notion of place and place-based education carries with it a very broad definition that can be contextualized and interpreted depending on the setting, the school, the pedagogical direction of the school, and the experience of the staff. So in our case, we use and have adopted a place-based education really as a pedagogy that supports the idea of inquiry, about asking big questions and about understanding our sense of place in our community. And really, it's linked very closely to the idea of experiential education and creating relevant learning activities that support that idea of inquiry for us within our mandate, within our charter.
Your whole school approach with this sounds amazing. Why do you believe place-based education is a benefit to the students? You mentioned using inquiry. Mm-hmm. Could you elaborate a little bit more on that, of what some of the key elements of place-based education are for you at CCS?
One of the key elements that we focus on is the idea of developing a sense of community. The vision of our school is preparing our students as extraordinary citizens. It isn't about academics. It's about creating those relevant real-world opportunities for students to make connections between what they learn in the classroom and how that knowledge and the skills that they acquire are going to be relevant to them in application in the real world. So really that sense of place, that idea of contributing to a community rather than just being a consumer from within it, is what drives our commitment towards the idea of place-based education. But I need to point out that we're new in this journey as well. It's something that's evolving as the school continues to grow and develop, and we deepen our understanding of inquiry and how place-based education can further the goals of our school and towards that vision of creating the elements for our students to be extraordinary citizens.
And so it was just over a year ago that you implemented it?
I think about a year and a half ago, and in some of the work that we've done with Mount Royal University, with Sutina Education, with the Outdoor Council of Canada, it was through a collaborative effort that we started to look at place-based education as something that would enhance our inquiry focus, and looking at the work that Dr. Kevin O'Connor has done from MRU, some of the research that he's done around place-based education, brought that into our school. And so rather than making it a mandate and a requirement, we've had teachers who have very organically started to integrate place-based education into their practice. So it's although it's very much part of what we do at the school, it's also just something that some teachers have embraced and taken on, and then others will try it. And so I would say our staff are at various points in terms of adopting and understanding their sense of place. And we had an educators symposium last April for our staff and other teachers as well, and all of the staff from Sabina Education. So we were looking at that. How do we collaborate around this? How do we build that sense of community? And in that case, it was a bridge to reconciliation as well by partnering with Sabina. And we had a Calgary Foundation grant that helped support that work. So it was a great way to initiate the process, and at least of getting into place-based education in more detail.
Mm-hmm. As Phil has shared where his school is at with place-based education, and that where the teachers are at, all at different stages of implementation and for different reasons, the main thing we see is that it's deeply rooted in community, building community and looking at where students live. And these real-world connections with local community members and organizations really bring a wealth of diverse knowledge and perspectives, content and context and experiences. Phil, your school has built many partnerships within your local community, and I'd like us to look at some of the key elements of place-based education, starting with connecting with the local community. And what is the connection that your school, that your students have directly experienced? And as you started to share about their local Indigenous community, could you share a little bit more about that?
Sure. Part of our initiative last year in working with Sabina Education was to, as I mentioned a moment ago, to start building that bridge to reconciliation, not as kind of checking off something on a list of things to do around the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but really developing a sustainable model of community partnership between us and Sabina. And some of the activities that were undertaken were really quite amazing. We had a shared professional development day where our staff went to Sabina School, and we shared the day with them in a series of activities looked at Indigenous ways of wellness, Indigenous understanding of language, the importance of culture, some of the Indigenous ways of knowing, and then in return our staff shared some of our knowledge around technology and how to integrate that into their learning. So on a teacher level, that was incredibly valuable. Students, we had some of our grade 7 students were partnered with some of their grade 3 and 4 students to create a mural down at Fort Calgary. That is going to be a legacy piece that's going to be on display for a very, very long time. We had other students that participated in an artist in residence program at our school, where we had Indigenous artists coming into the school and sharing their knowledge and understanding. And through it all, our students started to develop an appreciation for some of the oral traditions, the storytelling, the importance of the land and land-based learning, and how that fits into with place-based education. And I think we'll talk about that a little more in a few moments. But it's that whole idea of recognizing the importance of culture, of knowledge, of passing on some of those traditions and why it's important. And that's all wrapped up in that broader definition of what place-based education is. Mm-hmm.
What an exciting experience for your teachers and also your students. Could you share a little bit more about how they learned about the local culture and knowledge with Tutsina?
Sure. And one of the important aspects of what our initiative showed was the value of bringing elders into the school, of tapping into the wisdom and the knowledge that has been passed down from generation to generation. And in our Western society doesn't always value that to the same degree, and it could be because of the diversity of cultures that we all all that coexist within. However, it was something that we learned from our Tsuut'ina colleagues was the importance of bringing those elders in. So we brought a lot of storytellers into the school last year, really around that idea of sharing some of that oral knowledge with us. What did it represent in terms of their culture? Why was it important to them in terms of developing their sense of community? And what can we take away from that? And I think, although it's still early on, even in that process for us, that what we're anticipating is that our students are going to start to gain that appreciation about why it's important to understand place. What is it that the place does to us? And as Leroy Littlebear, this was an interesting quote from a symposium I attended in Edmonton a short while ago about the place telling the story. And when we take our students out on outdoor education trips, and we've done this for a long time, and we get them to go into their magic spots where they just take some time wherever they happen to be to reflect on where they are and why it's important to them, that is the importance of that place, and that place is speaking to them through that. So they come away from that with a deeper appreciation of the place, of what the land can teach, and why it is important for us to respect that and give back to it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And can you share with us a little bit? You just mentioned about having a magic place, and on our slide we have a circle and there's a fire. Could you tell us a little bit about what experience the students had here?
This particular image was actually one that was provided for us by Valerie McDougall and Tina Caffrobe at Tsuut'ina Education. So this is actually their students, and while we've been doing our outdoor education program and trying to find our way in place-based education, they have been doing land-based learning for a very, very long time. Mm-hmm. And this is actually their students from Tsuut'ina who are out on the land, who are learning about the importance and the symbolism of fire and what it means to actually be out on the land. There's a tremendous amount of knowledge that is retained within the land itself, and students are being infused with that knowledge, and it's being shared with them so that it will not find an end point. It'll be actually continued on from generation to generation.
So with the experiences that your students are having within place-based education, have you noticed any changes in their perspectives or their how they're learning, and what are some of the impacts that you've seen in your students?
It's been an interesting journey so far, and it continues to be one because we do some perspective checking with our students and our teachers on a regular basis. And one of the things that seems to come up as a bit of a theme is that whole idea of getting outside of our very insulated world, sometimes to see what is taking place in other communities, what is important to the Tsuut'ina students, what are the challenges being experienced there. We want to expand this whole idea about place so that our students are becoming more aware of our own communities as well, whether it be our local community or whether it expands out to something that's even more global, because there are that notion of what we can learn from people, from other cultures, from being in those places, is we don't know how far that can go. It's probably infinite to some degree, but it's changing our perspectives around our place in the world, and what does that mean in terms of being able to contribute and be a meaningful and significant member of a society, so that we're not just always drawn to be that consumer, as I was mentioning before.
Mm-hmm. I know when I first started using place-based education, it was overwhelming at times. It's like where to start. And we'd like to share some suggestions on what steps teachers can take who are interested in trying place-based education out, whether it's for a single lesson or a project or potentially their whole curriculum. From your experience, where did you start? How did you begin?
Well, what I discovered along the way is certainly that change can be a very challenging process for many of us. Not everyone is in the same state of readiness for change. So I think gauging the school or the individual's capacity to change, desire and willingness to try new things, their capacity for taking some calculated risks along the way, and making sure that there's a safety net there so that people understand that there are no wrong answers in trying to go down this path. It's just simply about the exploration, about developing relationships along the way, and it's finding that safety network so that everyone can move along at their own pace. That's not, you can't force this kind of change on people. Teachers require that mind shift that is going to be representative of a growth mindset along the way, where they're going to embrace some of those changes. And it's our hope that in time our staff are all going to be getting to that same point of acceptance and understanding, and going, yeah, well, I'm going to be able to share with my students or have them experience something related to place. And it doesn't have to be an extensive field experience. It can be a walk to the Weaselhead or North Glenmore Park. It can be going out onto the school ground and just finding something, within the context of our own campus. It can be something far more in depth than that. And in some cases, it doesn't require leaving the building at all, because that whole sense of place and the knowledge that goes with it is something that can be shared even by just opening up our doors and our minds to the idea of other people's points of view. And it really does come down a lot to looking at and examining our own worldview and saying, how do we perceive the world around us? What do we want to learn? And it goes back to the whole idea of inquiry, and whether or not asking those big questions is leading us on a journey to find that place that's going to provide the answers.
Yes, I can see a lot of parallels from what you were sharing to my own experience, or those first steps of reaching out into the community, looking out. And I totally agree. It starts in your schoolyard to build that awareness, and then into your local community. And I found it so amazing that when you started asking, people were more than happy to come in and to share ideas, or to welcome our students into their place of work, or their gardens, or what projects they were working on, and to be open to the idea that things may go in quite a different direction than you initially intended. That it's not like life; it's not a straight road.
And it's that acceptance and knowing in advance that the road isn't going to be a straight line. It's going to have bumps along the way. It's going to have hills and valleys, and that's okay. That's part of the journey. And being able to embrace it and enjoy that journey, and know that every single day along the way, we are learning something new. And it's recognizing that knowledge can come at us from a whole variety of sources. It can be, and some of them where we least expect it. I think that's important.
Exactly. So we now hope that we can offer that you take your turn. What are some things that you can do within your local community? Take a walk with your students. Notice the environment around you. See what community members there are. See what cultures are around. What issues are pressing within your community. And we would like to continue this journey with you. What support are you hoping for as you prepare to incorporate place-based education into your teaching practices now and in the future? Please share your ideas in the comment section below so we can begin to build a professional and collaborative dialogue. If you would like to see more webinars on this or other topics, just let us know. Phil, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. What great opportunities you are creating for your students, and we look forward to watching the growth of your program. Thanks for joining us for today's webinar, and we hope we have inspired you to try place-based education in whatever way works best for you and your students. Until next time, I'm Sabina, your MindFuel teacher.